Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thank you. How about you?
I'm great, and thanks for being in the event since the start.
Of course, very, very happy to join today. And I think it is a very important moment to gather together ahead of the Gender Equality Forum. So, very happy to be here.
Amazing. We're glad to have you, and also we're glad to have you join Nala Feminist Collective as council member. And maybe to start with, maybe you can tell us a bit about yourself. I know you're the founder of We Belong and doing amazing other things that we will talk about, but maybe in maybe 3 words, who is Yasmine?
In 3 words, I would say Yasmine is a feminist, an intersectional feminist, and an advocate. So these are 3 words. But then in more words, I would say maybe I'm, the founder of We Belong, which is a platform and podcast that gives a voice to the new daughters of Europe, which are immigrant descents. And so my focus, also being part of NALA, I have the extreme privilege of being part of a group of women advocating not only for gender equality in Africa, but also with the diaspora. And I feel more legitimate to speak about this because that's where I spent most of my life, out of Africa. But then I recognize also the importance of speaking in terms of intercontinental dialogue. And this is why a few years ago I joined as an expert on peace and security, the African Union and the European Union, to co-create projects with a budget of 10 million euros that are now in the implementation phase. This is a couple of roles that I cover, just to give everybody an idea.
Yeah, and so who are the daughters of Europe? You say We Belong is really telling the stories of daughters of Europe. There is an assumption of what Europe is and who are Europeans, and you are breaking those stereotypes.
Exactly. It is a bit of, an idea of challenging the status quo. For a long time, what seemed to be conceived as European was a monochrome image of, white privileged person. And then when I was awarded the Young European of the Year in 2019, I was the target of hate speech by hundreds of people, and among them the French far-right leader. And for me, it was important to bring a response. So We Belong started with that idea of, okay, there is polarizing views all across the world. We've seen these really internationally. We've seen these with populist groups taking up spaces and trying to divide us. And so us, as the new generation, we need to make sure that we promote more engaging views, more uniting views. And this is why intergenerational dialogues are crucial. I was born in a country, Italy, where the majority of population is old, whereas in Africa, the majority of population is actually young people. So how do we make sure that when we have these international dialogues, we have an equal and fair representation? When I've seen the efforts that have been made to bring together both young people and the leaders of the world, which I would love to see them being more young in the future, but when I have seen this process being led, I felt confident, and I still feel confident that there is an opportunity here to transfer this, intergenerational mechanism also to the national and local levels. That's my priority.
Absolutely. And you said that, you're born and raised in Italy, but you have Moroccan roots as well. And you were, a target for hate speech in France, all these places and identities. So tell us about identity, because it seems like our generation, when we reach a certain consciousness about who we are, when we start asking the question of who we are, some of us find the answer, and that gives us clarity on our mission and being proud of who we really are in our dimensional self. But some of us get lost and maybe get recruited to those who have ideologies that think this is who they are, this is where they belong, this is what they should be.
Of course. This is such a good question. And that's a question that I ask to many of my guests in the podcast. what's your identity? Where do you feel that you belong? Or how do you identify yourself? And for many of us, it has been a struggle. So I remember maybe when I was 17, 18, I wanted to go back in Morocco and live there to see if I would see myself living and serving the country of my father's roots. And I tried to do that. And then I quickly realized, having never lived there, it was very difficult for me to identify with certain sides of the society. But then when it comes to finding an harmony between who you are and where you are from and where you want to go, it is such an essential question. And as you say, it can be exploited by extremist groups to, to recruit these vulnerable young people that might have, an identity crisis. And this is why it is important, as we belong, to do this work of inclusion, to make sure that we tackle the problem before it comes, or that we create new role models for people to be like, okay, they went through the same questioning as me and they found a kind of response, or maybe they didn't, but then I can do also the same. So for us, it is important that we belong to make sure that we offer a safe space for people to share their stories, but also to share their concerns, which are many. And I will be very transparent here in saying that still in Italy, because we've seen a lot of waves of migration coming from sub-Saharan Africa and lots of people actually losing life in the Mediterranean, there is a lot of hate crimes in Italy going on as I speak. A few weeks ago, we had a young man who made suicide. He was he was from Ethiopia, at 20 years old. He made suicide because he felt the pressure of living in a society where he is not seen as equal. So for us, it is important to have these conversations. And when we talk about generation equality, when we talk about including young women, we also want to make sure that young women with immigrant backgrounds or with African roots are also included in the conversation. Today, in the institutions where I go, I'm often the only immigrant descent. And I want this to change because we are a reality also of Europe.
Exactly. And your work in trying to solve this problem is doing the intersection between business or entrepreneurship and social change. So how do you do that? Because I realize that many of the questions that especially people of African descent in Europe struggle with is economic empowerment, and because many actually migrate, some of the reasons that people migrate for. But also, even if you migrate for other reasons, being vulnerable economically can also lead to stigmatization, to marginalization, to other things. So how do you solve this issue with the work you do in both entrepreneurship, innovation, and social change?
Absolutely. I think that this intersection of the social, the economic, and the gender aspects, but also the racial ones, are essential to understand the problem and to find better ways to respond and to provide a solution. So we want to provide opportunities. We share regularly opportunities for young people to apply to programs and to actually have meaningful ways of enhancing their careers. I also individually do some mentorship programs, and I think it will be at least our priority to make sure that we provide meaningful economic opportunities to these young people. As you said, we cannot only tackle it by denouncing what is going on. At least it is my approach. I'm very impact driven, so I cannot only stop at observing what is not working. There needs a change at the policy level, but there needs also economic opportunities, as you said. So I believe that this is the way to go, and this is why social business is a field that I'm very, very passionate about and willing to pursue.
So you've heard from UNFPA, UN Women, from the Gates Foundation, from SIF, and all the young people what they've asked. I want to ask you the same question I asked them. Do you think, and you've observed, I'm sure you've been to many UN Women platforms and you've been part of this Jeff process, you think young women voices are really taken seriously, or it's a tokenism?
Well, I really love that question when I first read it. And I've been thinking of that. In many ways, there is still much to do to make sure that our role is meaningful and that we're not just there as voices or as tokens. So I look forward for in 2 weeks for the conference to bring a commitment and a mechanism. And when I talk about a mechanism, I want to see at different levels young women being appointed as advisors, young women being appointed and serving on a capacity role where they can actually see a change and bring a change. And I know that in different spheres this has been done behind the scenes. It's not something that might be very well communicated by institutions. This is why also as young people we have such a powerful tool which is called an iPhone or a phone.
We lost your voice. I think when you dropped your phone, maybe on your mic. Can't hear you. No, we lost your voice. I think when you dropped your phone. No, can't hear you.
Okay.
Oh yeah, okay. Can you try now?
Yes, can you
Yes,
hear?
yes, you're back.
What I was saying, just to conclude, through social media, we have a powerful tool to communicate ideas and also to bridge this gap between the institutional level and the civil society. So that's a role that I would see for us, but also more advisory role to understand and tackle better the issues we go through. One of the speakers, Erin, she was talking about the importance and the impact of COVID-19, which, you know, tremendously impacts women. More women than men are losing job. And so the next generation that will go to the job market, they will have more difficulty in finding permanent roles. So when we think about all these, we need to make sure that we have the financial support and that we have enough, I would say, positive discrimination programs, both at the private and public sectors, to make sure that women are actually equally appointed as men.
You know, a lot of people would usually ask when we have like young people in the diaspora, what is the role of the diaspora to support Africa and so on. I want to ask it differently, actually. What could Africans, young people in Africa do to support the causes of the diaspora? Because, as you said, we are the youngest population in Africa. It's getting younger and younger, but it's aging in Europe. You have different challenges. You are faced with different form of marginalization. So what are the real issues in Europe, and how do you think young people in Africa can support?
I would say, especially when it comes to supporting each other, I have learned so much from my colleagues back in the continent, especially from how resilient and how creative they are in tackling certain issues. And I would love to see maybe these co-creation processes being fostered, and also more of more visibility of African realities in Europe. Because, and I'm telling this because I will just give you an example of a former migrant who became an entrepreneur. He's Ghanaian, Omar Usman. He's in Spain. He is challenging the misconceptions on migration through his work, and actually showing how Ghana is through participating in media representation and work. So I think it would be important to have this co-creation also at the media level to change the narratives of what it means to be an African. Africa is not anymore the Africa that was left by the former colonies 50, 60 years ago. So we need to acknowledge this. And there is much ignorance that needs to be deconstructed in order to understand that, of course, there is challenges, there is also much potential, and we have a lot to learn from the continent too, here in Europe.
Absolutely. Thank you for answering all these questions. I want to invite everyone watching us to type in their question in the Q&A or use the chat box. I'm going to bring a few questions from you in. I want to go to the feminist leadership aspect, because you are advocating for gender equality. You are a young female yourself in different spaces, pushing boundaries. What do you think feminist leader is like, whether women or men? What should they have as values or actions or as beliefs?
Mm-hmm. For me, as I see feminist leadership, it should be inclusive, and inclusive of whoever feels that they, for me, it is a struggle for freedom. And freedom is not, I don't have a definition of freedom to just only comply to what I see as freedom. I try to be open on what freedom should be, and so, or could be. And so for me, understanding this, it's just the first process of having an inclusive leadership and feminist leadership. I also don't believe that we should bring enough women just for the sake of hitting a number and being like, okay, we're 50-50. We need to make sure that if we have a cabinet, there is meaningful roles that are given to women. And, you know, if there is a program that is fostered for women, let's make sure that we first hear from these women, and that then we build a response that is actually speaking to their concerns and their expectations. So I would say having as much diversity in the table as possible when we write policies, and also then making sure that we have an intergenerational also diversity. So really understanding that there is different perspectives out there.
Mm-hmm. I have a question coming here from Sutfa, who is asking you, how would you describe the connection between migration and women's rights, and how the manifesto speaks to young women from diaspora and African descent?
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a very good question. You know, I think that being an immigrant daughter, or, you know, a woman from the diaspora, it's a total different struggle, in the sense that there is an identity struggle, there is a gender struggle, there is, you know, many elements that add to the balance. And so when it comes to addressing our realities, it is not the same being an immigrant that lives in the US and is an African descent, who might face so many struggles but lives still in a country of immigration and have, you know, totally different reality than, for example, an immigrant living in Europe. And I feel that there is still so many unhealed wounds that immigrant descents live with and carry living in Europe. And so the moment that we will realize this, we will also understand that there is a need to bring these conversations, but also to bring a meaningful participation of immigrant descents. Today, when I switch on the TV in different countries where I happen to go, I barely see immigrant descents, or I barely see African descents. And so yeah, I think starting from spaces of visibility and influence, meaning media, policy, but also, as I say, entrepreneurship, it's a just the first step to then ensuring that other will follow. If we, set these representation models, which is not, again, tokenizing, just, putting there a person of color just for the sake of putting them there, but more like creating this mechanism, then we will be able to see a change, and also hopefully a change in mindsets, because, as I say, there is still lots of reluctance towards seeing us as part of society.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Yasmine, for your honesty and for sharing a little bit about yourself. I know there is more to who you are and to your story. I want to give you the final words to tell us maybe what would you say to the younger version of Yasmine, to the girls out there in Italy, in France, in Morocco, in Belgium, where you are right now, everywhere. What would you tell them?
So that's a very, very, very nice question. What I will tell them, or what I would tell myself, is don't be afraid to go out there and speak up for what you think matters. And I know that's what has always driven me since the age of 16 when I started advocating, but I always felt somehow, challenged on even just on my presence in a space where I was the youngest or the only woman or the only, whatever, box you want to put me in. But understanding that you can be wherever you want and hold that space with confidence because you belong. So that's my last word.
Don't be afraid, get out there, you belong. I love it. Thank you, Yasmine.